Welcome to DRAGONFIRE from Valerian Space Ventures, where we cover business, geopolitics, and news around the new space economy and space industry as a whole. Kicking it off with SpaceX, SpaceX is preparing a potential IPO in 2026 with an internal share sales implying an approximate valuation of around $800 billion, and reporting suggesting an IPO target around $1.5 trillion, which would rival the biggest listings ever. The company is reportedly aiming to raise well north of $30 billion, largely to fund a very high Starship flight rate, Starlink expansion, and even ambitions like in-space data centers and lunar bases. For public markets, this is effectively the moment when the dominant launch and broadband infrastructure player steps into the same league as the biggest tech and energy giants. For the rest of the space industry, it means more capital for Starship and Starlink, which could lower launch costs and bandwidth prices, but also a much more powerful competitor across multiple verticals. Moving on to K2 Space. K2 recently closed its $250 million Series C round, led by Redpoint, valuing the company at around $3 billion. The Torrance, California-based startup is building mega-class satellites buses designed to fully exploit heavy-lift vehicles like Starship and New Glenn, claiming roughly 10 times the power and payload of traditional platforms at lower prices. The company now has more than $500 million in signed contracts with a mix of US government and commercial customers, including a partnership with SES and its future MEO network. Strategically, K2 is positioning itself as the default high-power bus for everything from large constellations to in-orbit data centers, riding the economics of next-gen heavy launch instead of fighting in the crowded small-sat bus market. Speaking of data centers, the race for data centers is heating up. Multiple players from hyperscalers to specialized startups are now openly talking about building data centers in space. And even SpaceX has hinted at AI data centers in space as part of its future vision. The core thesis is straightforward. In-orbit compute, co-located with large constellations and Earth observation assets, can cut latency for space-to-space workloads, offer global coverage, and potentially leverage the cold, vacuum environment for more efficient cooling. K2's mega-class platforms are a natural host for this kind of infrastructure, while Starship's promised mass to orbit could make multi-ton compute payloads economically viable. Starfish Space and one of our portfolio companies, Impulse Space, recently announced the successful Remora mission, an autonomous rendezvous and proximity operation demo in low Earth orbit. Using Impulse's Mira spacecraft as the chaser and a previously launched Mira as the target, Starfish's software guided the active vehicle to within roughly 1,250 meters using a single TRL-11 camera and onboard computer vision in a closed-loop GNC system. This validates key pieces of Starfish's autonomy stack ahead of their planned Otter satellite servicing mission for customers like SES, the US Space Force, and NASA starting in 2026. For Impulse, it showcases Mira as a highly maneuverable, multi-mission platform with high-thrust SIFE engines and fine altitude control, ideal for tugs and servicing in space. And of course, the news would never be complete without news from China. China has stated that it aims to conduct the first launch of its new Long March 10 rocket and a lunar-capable crew spacecraft in 2026, a key milestone in its goal of landing taikonauts on the moon before 2030. The Long March 10 family uses a bundled first stage with clusters of YF-100K engines and will support both low Earth orbit crew, flights, and lunar missions, paired with the Mengzhu crew vehicle and the Lanyu lunar lander. This schedule puts China's first Long March 10 and new crew spacecraft in the same general timeframe as Artemis II, which is targeting a crewed lunar flyby around 2026 and ahead of NASA's currently planned Artemis III landing window. If China hits these milestones on the correct timelines, it will put pressure on the United States, as well as the SLS, Orion, and commercial landers, and accelerate cislunar infrastructure and defense planning. So to recap DRAGONFIRE today, SpaceX is gearing up for a record-breaking IPO, K2 Space is scaling megasat buses for the Starship era, orbital data centers are moving from concept to early architecture, as Starfish and Impulse have quietly checked a big box for autonomous servicing, and China is lining up a 2026 debut for its lunar-capable crew lander. If you want a deeper dive on any of these, especially the IPO mechanics or China's lunar architecture, drop a comment on which topic you want and we'll do a full episode.